Welcome, ladies and gentlemen who are watching and or listening to the Director's Chair. And in this Director's Chair, we will look at Paul Verhoeven, my guest at this time, the legendary Craig Cohen. Craig, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Seco. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and more importantly, it's a true pleasure to talk the legendary Paul Verhoeven.
Oh,
He was a
yes.
big director that I was a fan of when I really started to get into, the I really got into was Tarantino, uh, yeah, and maybe like Steven Soderbergh. But yeah,
What made him stand out to you?
the audacity. I mean, and I think that was the main thing that, like, I think the European sensibilities and just the audacity, I think, is a good word, but no hangups. So violence was on the table, sex was on the table, an overall rawness, but also that sense of satire. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss with Verhoeven. It's amazing to me that somebody can watch like RoboCop or even more importantly Starship Troopers and not see the satire. Um, and of course, Showgirls isn't a satire on purpose, but
You
it's
have
kind
to
of
be.
thought of.
You have to be.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
tits everywhere. Um, so I made this compiled this little list because obviously, unlike you came into contact with Paul Verhoeven probably around 1985, maybe 1987. 1985 was when Flesh and Blood came out.
Flesh and
That
Blood.
came
Yeah,
out in the United States, and then 1987, of course, was RoboCop, which basically put him on the map.
yeah.
And I grew up with Paul Verhoeven. Um, he was the premier director in the country, and there was no film industry until Paul Verhoeven started making movies. That's basically it. He started making movies in the early 70s, and he was a big part of what was then the Dutch sexual revolution, which basically he would just, make movies to shock people, uh, spice everything up, because he thought it was all boring and unrealistic, and everything was geared towards showing the lives of doctors and people of the elites. And basically, what Paul Verhoeven did in his Dutch cinema was basically show what life was like for Dutch people, the regular ones, the ones who didn't go to big schools like he did, because people may not notice, but he has holds master degrees in math and physics. So he's a Sheldon, basically. And it shows whenever you see footage of him directing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
He probably has a bathroom schedule. Anyway, so I made compiled this little list of all the complaints people have had about Paul Verhoeven in Holland over the years. And I was kind of curious to see if this holds up compared to your many critics who complain about Paul Verhoeven. So the critics complain that he's an iconoclast. Number two, he's not a moralist. Most movie makers are moralists. He is absolutely not a moralist. All his movies are just bereft of kind of any kind of personal opinion. He just shows it for what it is. It's like, hey, I'm making a movie about Nazis, and they're pretty young people, and they go to war. One of them actually causes the war. And so he makes no comment on that. So people assume, oh, because he's not a moralist, he must be the Nazi then. That's not exactly true, is it? So, three, he is absolutely obsessed with Jesus of Nazareth. Obsessed. He even wrote a book about it. And in all his movies, including this one, there is something about Jesus. There is, in this case, there is no Jesus whatsoever, because Jesus would not be in Las Vegas, except to cuddle all the strippers and kick everybody out of the casino because they're users or whatever they are. Anyway, so Holland is a artist town, right? Over the centuries. We've had quite a few. We've had Rembrandt, and we've had Vincent van Gogh, and Mondrian, and we had a bunch. So throughout the ages, artists like this choose a medium to express themselves. And that's something people don't get. This is a artist who absconded his parents' wishes to become a mathematician in some high school. Instead, he chose art. And his art, his canvas, was film. Because, as he always argued, if you're an artist and you're living in the 20th century, you wouldn't paint, you would have moving pictures. And that's something people don't realize. He's painting, his movies are art.
Yeah.
So that would be my top five. So I'm kind of interested in did this any of this resonate with any of the critics throughout his career in the United States?
I don't think the films that Verhoeven made in America really engaged critics enough for them to get deep into his filmmaking process, if you will. I think the only film that really probably got any serious critical attention, and critics at least got the theme behind it, was probably Starship Troopers. But aside from that, I mean, I don't really remember critics giving Verhoeven any kind of consideration, probably beyond the films he had made prior to coming to America. And it's funny because you look at a film like RoboCop, and it's a movie Verhoeven famously didn't want to make, and like most great decisions we make in this life, his wife convinced him to, because she clearly saw the potential in the script. But I think the main
money,
thing
Paul.
that I think yeah,
take the gig.
I think the main thing that critics really didn't get was that, like, RoboCop, not directed by Verhoeven, it's a very, very different film. And I think that kind of
Yes,
dovetails
we see that in
into,
the sequels.
yeah, oh no, absolutely. I mean, there's one
They're
RoboCop
completely
film in my
soulless.
opinion. Yeah. And it's funny because I think it kind of dovetails into Showgirls in the sense that no other filmmaker could have made Showgirls, for good or for bad. And I think Joe Eszterhas definitely needs to be part of this conversation, because no other filmmaker or screenwriter could have written the film. And I do want to sort of get in front of this right away and say, by no means am I saying that Showgirls is a great film. But at the same time, I'm going to say that I think a lot of people consider it a bad film without really taking the time to consider it. And I want to say that's fine. If you think Showgirls is a bad movie, it's completely your prerogative.
There's
Um,
always a personal taste.
exactly, but I think it kind of became a punching bag. And again, by no means am I
Yeah,
going
for
to
all the wrong
make.
reasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's actually a shame more than anything else, because if you look at it, I don't know what the rating system over there is like, but I mean, here we've got, the G, PG, PG-13, R. And when
Uh,
Showgirls was coming out, there was a big discussion about, you know, creating a rating that would allow for more intense filmmaking, and not be X-rated, which was the kiss of death. So they came
yeah,
up with
this
this
was,
NC.
I looked into this. This was purposely NC-17,
Yes, and
making
and and
it,
the
ironically, the most expensive NC-17 movie ever made.
well, because this pretty much killed the NC-17 rating from a theatrical exhibition perspective. I mean, there were even, theaters that refused to carry it anyway.
Yeah,
And I think the whole thing was
entire chains.
yeah, and it's funny because if you watch the movie, and I don't know if it's just the fact that I don't really watch movies through that lens, but I mean, there's nothing in this film that doesn't seem any more extreme than what you'd see in a typical R-rated film.
I don't think so. But this movie, this movie got people's feathers ruffled. And that was the whole point. That's what Paul Verhoeven does.
Yeah,
That's,
well, and
I think that's what makes him happy in some way. I still think he wants recognition, and I still think he wants people to see his art for what it is. But in reality, I think he does this stuff and he dials it up to 10 because that's what he's doing here. He's dialing it up. I mean, everything he does is hyperbolic. Everything from the lighting to the way it's shot to the way the shots are panned, all the noise to all the tits everywhere, the full frontal nudity, the way the dialogue is clipped, because it's all very clipped dialogue. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's not like people have long stretched out sentences. This isn't the king's speech, right? So this is all on purpose. This is all Paul Verhoeven trying to show you what Las Vegas is really like. It's not your dream. It is a sex industry. It's brutal, and it's an industrial machine to turn your vices into money for the people who own it. And that's what this entire movie is about. And
Yeah.
who functions in that? Well, and that's the main critique that I liked, that I think Paul Verhoeven likes as well, is like the it's almost a, you could put it as a tagline for the movie. Showgirls, it's about surviving in a world populated by assholes. Because that's what it is. Everybody in that movie is an absolute asshole, except one person.
Yep, Molly.
Molly. And
Yeah.
that's interesting, because we all know Verhoeven, and we all know how he works with dreams and how he kind of messes with reality. You never know if it's real or not. You never know if the protagonist is because they're always unreliable. All his protagonists are all unreliable. RoboCop is an unreliable narrator because he gets switched off, right? Total Recall, Doug has basically been brainwashed. He's unreliable. Basic Instincts, Shooter is drunk all the time, right? Michael Douglas's character, he's drunk all the time. He's unreliable. I mean, he gets into bed with a serial killer. He's nuts, right? And ironically, what people complain about Showgirls, the way people are screaming at each other and how it's also unrealistic. Okay, so look at Basic Instinct, which is considered a genre classic. They're doing the same thing. That's just his style. That's just, you have to accept it. It's just Paul Verhoeven films it this way. It's just going to happen. And nobody's going to tell him different because Paul Verhoeven is the master of his own art. There's no way. And of course, this is Paul Verhoeven at the height, at the very peak of his powers, right? He had hit after hit after hit. So now he gets to make the movie he wants to make. That's always typical of great directors, right? They build on their legacy, and then finally they get to make a movie that is just so ambitious that they're scared of it, and it's something then.
Yeah,
Right?
well,
It's
and
name a director, they've all done this. They all have like this Titanic of a movie.
yeah, well, and no, and that's the most remarkable thing about this movie is because I'm always amazed that this movie even got made at the level it got made. It's a big budget exploitation movie at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah,
fact that
on purpose.
Verhoeven and Eszterhas were able to sell MGM on this idea, that must have been a heck of a pitch meeting. And, I
I don't
think a
think they
lot of it
cared.
is,
I think very simply, Paul Verhoeven was printing money.
well, yeah, well,
They
no,
were he
especially,
just
and
all
you,
he had to do was say, "Hey, Joe Eszterhas is a great script. It's going to be about showgirls in Vegas." They were like, "How much money do you need?
yeah,
How much money do you need?" I mean, after RoboCop, after Total Recall, after Basic Instinct, how much money do you need, Paul? We love your stuff because you're making us rich. I think and then they got the final product. And I mean, there was some scuttlebutt before, of course, because he actually negotiated to get the NC-17 rating because he wanted to make a movie like this.
yeah,
He
yeah,
wanted to make a big budget movie that was for adults.
yeah,
This wasn't for kids. It's not
no,
intended for kids. It's not intended for the weak of heart because it's a serious subject to him, a very serious subject. Because this is basically about exploiting women, and there's a theme, a common thread throughout all his movies, from the very first, which was about prostitution in the red light district, to the last one he's made up till now, which is Benedetta. It's always about violence against women. He's depicting it. And this one is kind of in the middle. And if you look at it from the first one to Benedetta, it fits right in the theme.
Yeah.
It just
No,
fits right in. It's just the way he sees it. And it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to make. I'm not going to make anything else. And when he does make something other people want that he's not all on board in, then you get Hollow Man,
yeah. Yeah.
which
Uh,
which I'll cover at some point. But
yeah.
no, Showgirls, yeah. Okay, so basically what he did was he said, okay, instead of paying me 7 million, just give me points on the back end, right? Which is smart because this movie made a ton of money. That's something
Hmm.
people don't want to admit to because they're always clamoring, well, it did bad at the box office. It didn't do bad at the box office. It wasn't in enough theaters. It was only in 1,300 theaters when there was at that time you had like 2,500 to 3,000, right?
Yeah.
So it still came in second on opening weekend behind Seven. If it had had all the theaters, it would have still been in second place, but it would have made more money
Yeah.
opening weekend. And then it would have made its money back easy because it would have been break even right out of the gate. But a phenomenon called licensing and distribution, which is like hard copy sales of VHS tapes and DVD sales and Blu-ray, shows a very different picture. This is the one of the, if not the best seller for MGM. This makes more money than Bond. They're like 100 million in the plus. So Paul Verhoeven did okay on this.
Yeah.
And when people claim, yeah, it was a failure, critical failure, really? I mean, that was his intention to piss off the critics. That's why he made a movie like this, right? Why else would he do? Otherwise, he would have put stuff in there and like he would have made it Oscar bait. He could have made it very tragic, right? And then it would have been Oscar bait. But it's not. Instead, we got what we got because Verhoeven loves this stuff.
Yeah. And I think the biggest historical complaint with this movie, and Verhoeven has since sort of gone on record and taken full ownership of this and apologized, um, is really Elizabeth Berkley's
Poor
performance.
Beth. Poor Beth.
And
Um,
I
yeah.
and I think that's sort of what really redirects this movie into, for lack of a better word, like camp territory. And it's funny because anytime you watch a performance in a movie, and we talked about this on Ryan's Michael Mann coverage with Al Pacino,
Right.
especially in Heat, is when an actor's doing something, uh, there's two things going on. Either it's at the director's sort of suggestion, or the director's okay with it. In the
Mm-hmm.
case of Showgirls, it was a specific performance he wanted Elizabeth Berkley to deliver. Um,
Otherwise, he would have either fired her or she would have had to do a new take because he's famous
yeah,
for that. He'll keep you in
yeah,
the room for 2 days.
yeah.
He's done
Well,
that.
well, well, and the problem here though is this movie pretty much ended Elizabeth Berkley's mainstream film career. So you can't even say go back and look and let her work sort of speak for her abilities as an actress because nobody's ever really gotten to see it beyond Saved by the Bell, So
Yeah,
it's kind of
right.
funny that like
Well, she was in
and
the
she
First Wives Club,
well
and she
yeah,
was
but
she actually got good reviews for that. So it wasn't
yeah,
really that.
but I mean if you ask the average Joe on the street,
Yeah,
they're gonna say not a good actress. But I mean, uh, it's funny though when you watch the movie. Obviously, she was 100% committed to the performance. It's a very physical performance. Um,
the girl
I'm
can
not a,
dance.
yeah, well, yeah, and I'm not a dancer, and I don't have the eye to sort of and beyond establishing if somebody's got rhythm or not. But all the talk about her being a natural talent and things like that, I buy it. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, I mean it's funny that like the cheapest shot somebody can take of this movie is the performances, and
Yeah,
even
I
Kyle
think if you want
MacLachlan.
to
Yeah,
explain Elizabeth Berkley's performance, you have to explain the theme of this movie. And then you get into vague territory because this whole thing might just be a dream. This might just be a dream of a hooker somewhere who dreams about going to Las Vegas and making it as a showgirl. Because if you really look at what happens to her throughout the story, which is kind of disjointed in many ways, everybody's out to get her, right? Everybody is an adversary, except the one person who isn't. And she basically has to like do whatever she can, exploit anybody she possibly can, gain any advantage she can get in order to get ahead and to win. And when she finally wins, she realizes people still think I'm a whore. Because that's the theme of this movie. It's about a girl who doesn't want to be a prostitute anymore. And this is her dream. At least she thinks she can escape from that life and from her past by reinventing herself as this star showgirl. And it could all be a dream because it ends the way it begins, even with the same guy, because that's how the movie starts. It's a girl. She looks good in jeans. She sticks out her thumb to hitchhike. It's somewhere, I don't know, in the Rocky Mountains somewhere. I don't know where it is. Looked cold. And so this dude picks her up, right? And the minute she gets in the car, she kind of sizes him up. It's like, who am I getting in the car with? Is he going to cut me into little pieces? What does he want? Right? Am I just getting a ride here? And so the minute he says something she doesn't like, she whips out a switchblade. And that's the introduction of the character. And that's also the ending of the movie. So this is either a dream or this character, because this is a character-driven movie, because this is not a story, not really. It's nonsense. It's a childish dream. This character has no arc. There's no learning curve here. There's nothing. When you start and when you finish, it's basically the same thing. It's like the girl learns nothing. So, okay, I'm coming into this town to stop being a whore. But this town is all about exploiting her as a prostitute. That's the theme of the movie. So Verhoeven specifically directed her to have this reaction to everybody, right? Everybody she meets, as soon as she finds this person objectionable in some way, they treat her like a piece of meat, she just goes off. She just turns into evil whore. But the minute these people are nice to her and see something in her, like, oh, you might have some talent, or you might be a star, or you might be a lot nicer than you look. Then she becomes this like almost childlike, like almost giddy little girl, like this teenager who just wants to eat potato chips and have hamburgers and enjoy herself, right? So there's this like extreme. And in my opinion, those reactions, you have those basic reactions when you're dreaming. So that's what I think is going on here. It's not on the nose. And usually, Verhoeven is a little bit more on the nose with things. RoboCop is on the nose. I'm making a movie about Jesus. That's what RoboCop is. It's about the resurrection of Jesus. It's about a guy, he gets crucified, and he's resurrected as a robot, and he becomes something else. And finally, he finds himself and becomes Jesus of Nazareth. That's Verhoeven's obsession. Same with Total Recall. It's a dream. Doug Quaid, in reality, is probably in some hospital getting lobotomized, as we talked about it, when we talked about this movie. So same here. So here's Elizabeth Berkley being lambasted for being a bad actress, and she's not lambasted for anything else because this chick is hot. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen on screen ever. This girl can take her clothes off, and she's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what Verhoeven saw. He's painting a nude. What do artists do? They paint nudes. But when it's a painting, then everybody is admiring it. It's like, oh, they're worshiping this nude. But when it's a moving picture, then it's somehow dirty, wrong, the actress's fault. Interesting reaction. And that's what Paul Verhoeven was after, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, no, and it's interesting too because one of the sort of things that lends credence to your theory is that for all the bullshit she brings to situations, people just can't help but embrace her and bring her in and try and um give her opportunities. Where at the end of the day, you'd be like,
Yes.
yeah, it's just easier not to deal with this bitch. You know what I mean? Like, and the
Yeah.
fact
There's
that, she's the center of everyone's universe does lend credence to this. But at the same time, I'd like to say sort of that it's interesting, and it's one of the things that I think is the most interesting thing about the collaborations between Eszterhas and Verhoeven is Eszterhas has never been a subtle screenwriter. you know, he's
not at
kind of
all.
a beat you over the head type of guy. Um, I love him as a screenwriter, and I think he's an important part of the Hollywood screenwriter story. And it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of screenwriters didn't sort of take the lead from him and really fight for themselves and fight for the art of screenwriting and fight for their place in telling stories. But
Eszterhas at one point was the highest paid screenwriter ever.
yeah, yeah, and I think that um, it's funny because I think a lot of screenwriters resented him, and that's probably why. But he earned every cent of every dollar that he made. But the funny thing I think is with Verhoeven and Eszterhas as a filmmaking partnership, if you will, is the way that Verhoeven interprets Eszterhas's scripts. And
Hmm.
it's funny because it's been a while since I've read it, but um, Eszterhas has written a couple of biographies or autobiographies. One of them is American Animal, um,
Right.
or Holly. What's it called? Hollywood Animal. I think Hollywood Animal. Either way, and he goes into detail, heavy detail, about all of his films, including Basic Instinct and Showgirls. And
Hmm.
he's very much on the record as not agreeing with some of the choices that Verhoeven made, but uh, which is funny because, like you said, Verhoeven's interpretation adds a level to the film that wouldn't have been there if another director had picked up the script and made it. But at the
Precisely.
same time, Eszterhas was writing a script that he knew Verhoeven was going to direct. So, uh,
So yeah,
it,
yeah. I mean, they were in cahoots. They were giddy with this stuff. It's obvious. It shows. It obviously. Here's an interesting thing. When asked, Verhoeven at some point said, "Well, if you look at Ingmar Bergman movies, Ingmar Bergman always said that filmmaking is always instinct. Everything you do is instinct. You make choices, and those choices are whatever they are. And here's the mathematician saying this. It's like there's nothing to calculate here. You just go with your gut." And so he says, through this movie, I learned that I'm right 80% of the time, not 100. I mean, if you look at how he started and if it's started, if he how he made his start in the States, it was with RoboCop, and they had like this huge problem finding the right actor, right? Because the studios wanted Schwarzenegger because they were thinking Terminator, and he said, and obviously he's like, no, it's not going to work because of the suit. We need a really thin guy, otherwise he won't fit in the suit. So they were like, yeah, yeah. So at some point, Michael Ironside, because Verhoeven always wanted to work with him. And so, and they ended up with Weller, probably for the same reason why they ended up with Elizabeth Berkley, an unknown, and probably the same reason why they picked Gina Gershon. Um, American actors have a hard time getting it, have a hard time understanding what Paul Verhoeven wants, and that's how you make a movie work. It's is a director convincing his actors what kind of movie they're in. And once they know what movie they're in, then it's fine. Then they find their character. Um, and in the case of Gina Gershon, it's obvious because she carries this movie, right? She's really convincing as Crystal. and she's like the nemesis slash older sister slash whatever it is. Um, the main character is basically looking at her future as a showgirl when she looks at Crystal. And at first, she looks at her and thinks, wow, she's a goddess. That's what I want. But that's not how Crystal is acting throughout this, right? She always has this like kind of like a sardonic little smile, and she doesn't really take anything seriously. And like everyone else, she's looking for a way out. In that, Verhoeven has a great gift for casting the right people. And people complain about Elizabeth Berkley, but I think she was perfectly cast for this because that's precisely the person he wanted. Someone who seems somehow innocent, but also completely evil. Because if you look at the actions of Nomi, and we'll get into the name in a minute, if you look at her actions, she's not a really good person, is she? There's nothing in her actions that are, remotely redeemable from the get-go. I mean, she whips out a switchblade at a person giving her a ride. I'd kick her out of the car. Excuse me, could you leave the car,
Well,
please?
well,
Otherwise, I
yeah,
have
and then
to,
also even
use my
even
right to
her
bear arms.
yeah, and then even her first interactions with Molly, who's like genuinely showing her kindness, and she
Mm-hmm.
she does everything she can to be like, get the response of like, why should I help you? Like,
Yeah, the
um,
only innocent person in the entire film,
and she
which
well,
which kind of gave me pause because you can sort of take it as okay, she's the token victim, right? Because they have to show this everybody's evil, and so someone will suffer, right? And you need a example to make this point. Or Molly doesn't exist. Molly is an aspect of Nomi's character, the innocent part that gets raped, the part that gets taken advantage of, because they meet after her ride, uh, loses her luggage because the guy she was with stole it, and she freaks out. And she doesn't just freak out. I mean, she just has a tantrum, which is weird when you think about it. And so she starts beating on someone's car, and that's Molly's little car. And somehow this Molly takes pity on her and buys her junk food. And apparently, a couple of weeks later, slash cut, she's living in Molly's trailer home and she's going to work. The work is stripping, which I suspect, considering how good she looks on stage, she had been doing for a while, not just in Vegas, but somewhere else. She just
yeah,
moved to Vegas because that's where you make your money as a stripper, right? That's stripper
hmm
Valhalla. And that's what this movie is. It's a kind of a documentary about sex Valhalla in America, right? You go to
yeah,
Vegas to go to strip bars and to see naked women and to gamble and to have lots of food. And then you leave, and whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's the saying, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's what our friend Verhoeven is showing you. It's like this is what you're doing. This is the industry. This is these women are basically meat for the grinder. And they're not nice people because if you survive in an industry like that, if you somehow thrive in it, then, well, this is what it takes. This is the kind of character you have. Because Nomi, and here comes the name, it's not her real name, of course. She's reinventing herself. And why Nomi? Why not Naomi? Well, know me. You have to know me. You
hmm
must see me for who I really am, because I am not a prostitute. You must know me. I am a talented dancer. I am so know me. And she gets angry with every character in the movie that doesn't know her, that just sees the prostitute. And the people that sort of try to know her, like the bouncer guy who hits on her the entire movie, she has a kind of, well, okay, let's see what this really is. And she sort of pulls him, you know, to see if he's relationship material. And of course, obviously, he proves he isn't. But Know me is basically her way of saying to people, you have to look past the surface. And that's what Verhoeven is doing with this movie. Look past the surface, look past the glitter, look past the lights, look past all the bombast, look past the superficiality of Las Vegas. What you see is something very nasty. The longer you look, the more you're gonna the more you're gonna push it away. And of course, that's what happens to this movie. And the critics and the audience, and they killed the messenger for it. They kill poor Liz Berkeley. She proves Paul Verhoeven's point. The girl never was in another movie again. Why? Why? She could have been in a dance movie. She could have been in Coyote Ugly, right? She could have danced on the bar. She would have looked great, better than the chicks that were in it.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. And that's what makes this a very, very influential movie because people are still talking about this 20 years, 25 years later,
Yeah.
30 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. And well, and I think another aspect of this movie we need to talk about is just overall um, the production values, the look of it. It looks like $1 million. And but, I mean, of course it does. I mean, every Verhoeven movie looks like $1 million, but I think again at the end of the day, this movie was judged on its budget too, because this
Yeah.
could have been made as a sort of a grindhouse style movie, uh, and probably been just as effective. But the fact that it was presented in this, you know, shiny, you know, pristine package, I think it threw a lot of people off because at the end of the day, it's a very dark movie. It's a very, uh, it's not easy subject material. So I think it was like part of the way this movie was sold. The darkness wasn't really part of the marketing of this film,
They had
and I
no
do
clue
want to
how to
talk
market
about
this.
yeah,
They
and
just
I do want
didn't
to
have a
talk
clue.
yeah, and I do want to talk about this because I know our buddy Sean from the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network brought
Our
this up when
defunct
he
network, the
yeah
last hurrah. How sad it was. How disastrously that was snatched from us.
yeah unfortunately. But I do know that he is not a fan of the direction this movie goes in. Uh, and it's a valid take, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, the movie has to go there. There has to be a
Yes.
moment. There has to be a moment that snaps Nomi out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because they can do
When the
whatever they
dream
want.
goes bad.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want to Nomi. Nomi can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
She can roll with the punches, for lack of a better term.
And the irony is, nothing touches her in this film. Yes, she's upset, but nothing really touches her. She's not the one who gets violently raped.
Hmm.
No, that's her friend. Or this happened all happened to her before, and it's just a it's a conglomerate of all her memories. So that's an interesting take. Well, that's my take anyway. But yeah, it's Sean's take was, well, this is it's a satire. It's a black comedy. So it shouldn't go there. It should have more lean into the comedy more, and it should be funny. And well, that's the problem. What they're doing there isn't funny at all. Not to Paul Verhoeven. And so he may not be a moralist, but he abhors violence against women. And in his opinion, Las Vegas in its entirety is just gross. That's what this movie proves. It's like there's nobody likable anywhere because the people who are likable, they don't survive. They end up in hospital. I found that amazing. And I found his reaction amazing. It's like,
Well,
yeah, I was disappointed with the movie because it wasn't funny or it didn't go somewhere funny. So I would feel better about Las Vegas and I would feel better about what's happening to this woman, right? Because that's the American way. If you make a movie where you're showing something really gruesome and their things are blowing up, and it's terrible. Someone's head is being chopped off. Then you just end it with a joke. You make it funny, haha, and then everything is okay again. Because we didn't mean it. We were making a joke. That's basically what that says. Then you can present it as entertainment. And here's Paul Verhoeven saying, "Yeah, let's not go there. This isn't funny at all. This is reality. I've talked to 200 strippers and dancers and prostitutes because they did some serious research, right? And they
Hmm.
had such fun doing it. I mean, you can just imagine, like him and Joe Eszterhas talking to all the major players in Vegas, and they're big names, so of course people are going to show up and tell them everything they know. It's like, oh yeah. And he said, well, basically every note I took, it all ended up in the movie. Everything that happens is someone's anecdote. So that's not a pretty picture. That's not funny. Haha. There's no satire in there. Well, to a degree, because there's the typical Paul Verhoeven kind of, you know, body humor, where she's finally getting with the bouncer guy, and so they're making out, and it's like, I mean, this isn't just making out. This isn't Hollywood making out. This is a Dutch movie making out. There's tongues everywhere, nipples are pierced, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and so at some point, she says, "I can't," and he says, "Why?" I said, "I'm on my period." Of course, he doesn't believe it. What guy would? I mean, we're here. And she goes, "Check." So he sticks a finger in there, and he
Hmm.
comes out, and it has blood on it. And he's like, "Hey, I got towels," but she leaves in a huff, right? That's
Hmm.
really Dutch. That's if you watch it like a Dutch movie from the 70s, there's a lot of that stuff going on. That's what he came from. That's what he finds funny. It's like, yeah, now
Yeah.
we're gonna present them. I mean, you don't really get sex in this film. You don't get it because once she was on her period, and in the other one, it's underwater. You don't see anything. It's just waves.
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven
Um,
was having a laugh while he was filming that. It's like, okay, now everybody's going to be expecting sex, but you're not going to get it.
yeah.
The only sex you're going to get is forced.
Hmm.
When three guys force themselves on an innocent woman who didn't ask for it,
Hmm.
who's just a fan,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Because
and then also the simulated sex that we get, where,
yeah,
Smith famously says to her, you were fucking him without fucking him. You know
the
what I
lap
mean? And
dance. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
That's
uh,
that's Paul Verhoeven's commentary on that phenomenon because that's not European. We don't do that here at all.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
just you
But
just if you do that, you just go to a prostitute. It takes 15 minutes and you pay maybe 40 euros and you
yeah,
get your
and you're
dick
done.
sucked and you get
Uh,
to have sex and you come. And that's it. It's
yeah.
just okay, Saturday night. You had dinner, you've been to a movie, you're out with your buddies, you pick a prostitute and you have fun. Right. And so in America, it's like, well, you go to with your buddies to a strip bar and you go to the buffet and then you get a lap dance, right? For your birthday or something.
Yeah.
Paul
Uh,
Verhoeven does not get that. Well, he gets it, but he kind of, well, there's the satire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other funny thing is, you mentioned the scene where, she says she's on her period, and he calls her bluff. But it seems like that's a tool that Nomi uses because earlier in the
It was
film,
foreshadowed
yeah,
in like a
Robert
red herring.
Davi, yeah, asked her why she missed her shift, and she says, "I had my period." So
Yeah.
it was
You don't
funny, and
want
there's
me to bleed
actually,
all over the States, do you?
yeah.
Bad for business.
Uh, but it's interesting because there's a lot of those sort of what Chekhov's gun type moments, and one
Right.
that I noticed watching the movie again for this podcast, and I watched the movie a dozen times probably, but
Mm,
I didn't really pick it up until this time, is how many times they reference falling down those stairs.
right.
So it's like, of course, it needs to culminate with somebody being pushed or quote unquote falling down those stairs. But
They
it's
even
pretty
foreshadow
wild.
it with the other girl who avenges
Yeah.
herself. Right.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm thinking this entire thing is like a dream state. It has to be because it's so on the nose.
Yeah. But
And my
yeah.
favorite thing about this movie, and we'll get into the ending, but my favorite thing is at the very end of the movie, and when she gets into truck of the same guy, and they're arguing over where her luggage is. You see the sign where she's going next,
Hmm.
right? Los Angeles. She's going from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. She's going from
Hmm.
bad to worse. That's what Paul Verhoeven is saying. It's a commentary.
Yeah.
That's if there had been a sequel, it would have been about how Nomi is in the porn industry trying to break into mainstream acting.
Hmm.
It would have written itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She would have run
Um,
into the Harvey Weinstein of this world.
yeah. Yeah. Well, one interesting thing that sort of, and this is another thing I noticed for the first time last night when I watched it again. And this kind of gives credence to your theory though. When they're at the Paradiso at the Andrew Carver party,
Right.
Nomi's dancing with Zach, Kyle
Mm-hmm.
MacLachlan, and his gloriously ridiculous haircut. Um, I, I can't get over the entire presentation of him as a character.
You either like or dislike Kyle MacLachlan's haircut. It's just what it is.
I think he's perfect in this film, and it's unfortunate
Yeah.
that he doesn't see that. But if you watch that scene in the background, you see the Thai businessman from the boat show dancing with Nikki, who was the other girl who went to the boat show, and I never noticed him before.
Right.
Um, and that
She
alone,
stayed. She stayed for karaoke in the after party.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But then also it's this whole sort of playing with time because I think after the 6 week time jump from when she arrives in Vegas to when she's dancing at the Cheetah,
Mm-hmm.
our whole sense of time is fucked.
Yeah.
Because a lot happens, and you're like, well, does this happen over the period of days, the period of weeks, the period of months?
I mean, is she
And
that talented that she becomes like um the new girl into the understudy of the lead?
yeah,
I
to the
mean,
lead. Uh,
to the
uh,
lead.
and I think that businessman being at the Paradiso, well, like for me, I was like, well, it's got to be a couple of weeks later, right? Like, and I'm like, how long is he in town for? Or did he go away and then come back? Um, but either way, I thought
Mm-hmm.
it was an interesting detail that he ended up at that party, and like I said, I'd never noticed him before.
Yeah, because
Uh,
he's supposed to be what a heavy roller, right?
yeah,
An important customer for the casino to be placated to, the will keep him happy with free tickets to stuff and showgirls to bang and that kind of thing.
yeah. So it was definitely interesting, and your
Because that's
interpret.
the suggestion at the end of the movie, and that's the ending of it, is that Nomi's made it. She's the star of the show. She's the goddess. But Zach, Kyle MacLachlan, the director, finds out about her past that she's been trying to hide, right? Oh, I don't know my social security number. Oh, I'm from back east somewhere, from all over the place. I've done a lot of stuff, blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows anything about her because nobody has to know anything about her because it's her dream. You don't introduce yourself in your own dream. You know everything about yourself, but you're hiding stuff from yourself while you're dreaming. Again, my theory. But Zach finds out, and that's always your worst fear, right? Yeah. So guess what? I found out that you were a hooker and you were busted here and here and here and here and you had possession and you're violent and you assaulted people. And so he's basically saying, you're going to be a star here and you're going to be very valuable to us. And, you're going to make us a lot of money. And basically what he's saying is, yeah, I'm your pimp now. I'm not going to be your
Yeah,
boyfriend. I'm your pimp. And
yeah,
she
yeah,
recognizes it. And that's why the ending, I mean, if you look at the ending and you just look at basically the story, it's like, why would she leave? She's made it. No, she hasn't, because the dream is not becoming the goddess of the show. The dream is getting away from prostitution, getting away from her past. And she finds out, oh God, I'm the biggest whore here. Because that's what Crystal keeps telling her. It's like, no, I can just buy you if I want to. Because she does. She keeps proving out throughout the movie, no, I'm a whore and I do this for money. and I give my customers what they want. And then Nomi shoves her down the stairs, and she can sue the casino and get a settlement, and she's actually happy about it because she got out.
Yeah.
Right? We should all be thrown down the stairs.
Well, yeah, and that's also the most interesting thing about it is, you think when Zach finds out who she really is, that, the jig is up. But like you said, he sees
He
it as
just sees dollar signs.
he sees it
They
as an
were worried about,
opportunity.
they couldn't control her.
Yeah. Hmm.
How are we going to control this chick? I mean, Crystal was a commodity. They knew what they had there because she'd been a star for ages. So what are we going to do? Get Paula Abdul or get this girl, get Latoya,
Yeah.
or no, too expensive. And now they have this chick, and they can just keep her there in perpetuity. Because where else is she going to go? Right?
Yeah.
Well, apparently back on the road,
Yeah. Well,
off to
and then
LA,
also
baby.
they also show that she's part of this bigger machine that is going to protect people like Andrew Carver as well.
Right.
Like he's not at our casino right now, but in two
But
or
he's going
three
to
years
be.
he might be. So he
He's going
needs
to
to
be a
be
big deal.
protected. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to marry you to this felon, right? Enjoy your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Well, and again, like for me, the ending is perfect.
Yeah,
The
great
the
ending.
moment that gets her there isn't, and it's a difficult scene to watch, and I think that's probably what threw Sean and a lot of other people off is like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. But one
Violence.
thing Verhoeven's great at is like, you're buying a ticket, you're going to take the full ride, whether you want to or not. And I think that's the real thing that I think a lot of people that threw a lot of people off. They were like, "Hey, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for a
No,
a fun Vegas movie."
right.
And Verhoeven doesn't give you that. He gives you something really, really dark and sinister instead. And the
Yep.
the funniest part about it is, and this is
And nobody
probably
warned them this was a horror movie, right?
no, well, no, and the other thing is this is this speaks to the commentary on how women are treated in society and violence against women is
Hmm.
in the scene with Molly. You really see the violence, and you contrast that with the scene where Nomi goes to get her vengeance on Carver. You
Hmm.
see the initial hit, but from that point, all you're seeing is the kicks from a POV perspective, if you will.
Right.
You're
You
not
get like
seeing,
the Jean-Claude Van Damme wheel kick.
yeah,
That's
but
what you
but
get.
you don't see the violence that is inflicted on Carver, aside
Nope.
from her end of things. Whereas
Hmm.
you contrast that with the fact that we very much saw the violence that was
Tarantino stole
committed.
this for his movie because he loves Showgirls, and he
Yeah.
stole this for the ending of his movie for Death Proof. That's the Death Proof ending. The three girls avenging themselves on Kurt Russell, and they
Yeah.
kick him to death.
But in that scenario, we see the violence. We see Kurt Russell's head get smashed,
Right.
and that's the thing. I mean, here we don't see the aftermath of what happened. But if you look at what she does and you're keeping score of it, you're like, she really fucked this guy up. Like, you
Totally.
almost wonder if he's going to be able to perform ever again.
Yep. They're
uh,
probably gonna, if that actually happened, if it wasn't just a dream, then they're gonna have to be wiring his jaw together.
yeah, but
Good
the
luck in
thing
your
is, I
career,
wonder.
buddy.
Do you have any take on the hows or whys of seeing the violence against Molly and not really seeing it against Carver?
I think he purposely didn't show it um, because he wanted to focus to be on her and what happened to her. Because we already know what happened to her. She's basically probably did the same thing to him. She might even have gotten a little because ironically he leaves it up to our imagination. But at that point she's fairly psychotic. So that switchblade that came out, she might have gotten creative with that. You never know. There's a reason why she leaves town really quick.
Yeah, yeah,
She does stop to dress up in some new nice Versace.
yes. Uh, yeah, it's wild because I never really thought about some of the concepts and ideas that you're presenting. And like I said, Eszterhas is a very sort of on the nose filmmaker. So
Hmm.
interpreting his stuff through the lens of Verhoeven is going to leave you a lot of uh, interesting
Yeah, it's a
questions.
very interesting pairing because I'm used to Verhoeven working with Soutendijk, which is basically his the usual guy he writes with. And Verhoeven is very much a auteur director. But he usually picks a book and they just rework that into a scenario, right? Like with Soldier Orange, they picked an actual autobiography of an actual person, the actual Erik Hazelhoff Roelsema, and made it into a movie. And Verhoeven did his take on it. That's not really what happened to Hazelhoff. It's kind of an amalgamation of what happened to a lot of guys who got into a boat and went to England to fight uh, Nazi Germany, right? The thing with Eszterhas, if you look at Eszterhas's script for Basic Instinct, a lot of the things you see aren't on the page. Like the scene where Sharon Stone bears all, right? Where she basically spreads her legs. That's something that happened to Paul Verhoeven personally in college at
Hmm.
some point,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot of Paul Verhoeven in all his movies. And that's why Jesus Christ keeps showing up. That's why violence against women is almost a theme in all of his films. Flesh and Blood is almost the same story when you think about it. And the same with an earlier movie he did in Holland, which was called Spatters, which is about three guys who are um, romantically interested in a girl who works in a burger joint. And so they all try. And finally, she settles for the last one because the first one kills himself after an accident, and the other one turns out to be gay. Verhoeven is the
Not a
dominant
real,
partner in this.
yeah. Well, it's also
That's the
not
point I was
like a,
trying to make.
yeah. I think it's not, and Esterhaus talks about this in his books too. Is it wasn't really a collaboration in the sense that after the script was done, Esterhaus had a lot of input on set, and I think that's part of the issues he had, and why he almost walked from Basic Instinct. And um, thank goodness the partnership ended up the way it did because we got the films that we got. But it's sort
Yeah.
of easy to
And it's
see.
Esterhazy's best stuff. Let's
Well,
face
yeah,
facts.
yeah,
Because someone
but it's
took his
also easy to,
scripts and
yeah,
made it art.
yeah. It's easy to see Esterhaus's point of view though, because he's a very opinionated guy, and like I said, he fought for his scripts. But again, at the end of the day, thank goodness that this collaboration wound up the way it did. Uh,
Mhm.
it's amazing, and again, I think
Yeah,
as
he's
I
not
think
writing the screenplay for Jesus of Nazareth, apparently.
yeah, yeah.
Paul Verhoeven
Uh,
is still looking for a guy to write it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Esterhaus is in his 80s now. He's had some battles in his life. He's battled throat cancer. Um, the dude has earned whatever he's earned in terms of where he's at now. Um,
Retirement.
again, at the end of the day, I really have to say, thank goodness that Verhoeven and Esterhaus had the stroke to get this movie made. Thank goodness the executives in charge of the purse strings at MGM didn't think twice about what they were paying for, because we got a movie that shouldn't have been made, that was made,
True.
and is, whether or not you think it's a good movie at the end of the day, it's a remarkable movie, and
I think it's good art
yeah,
because that's what he was
it's
making. This is an art house film done in Hollywood. It's his last
yeah.
art house film in Hollywood, but that's what it is. And ironically, Hollywood wanted him because of his art house movies, because of his Dutch sensibilities. That's why they wanted him. The thing is, yeah, we it's great that you can do that, but we want it this way, right? That's always been his frustration. It was a frustration in RoboCop. It was a frustration in Total Recall, and it was a frustration in Starship Troopers. Is that um, he has all these abilities, but they're constantly reining him in. Showgirls, that's just an unleashed Verhoeven film. Like it or
Yeah.
dislike it.
Well, no, and that's the funniest thing about any kind of, commercial art, if you think about it.
Hmm.
And it's happened with plenty of filmmakers. It's happened with plenty of music artists. It's like, well, do you want me, or do you want the potential to make money from me? Because it's like, if you want
Exactly.
me, let
They
me
want the
let me do what
cachet
I'm.
of having someone as Verhoeven. They don't want to actually have him do what he's good at
Yeah.
because the cachet will sell the movie. And that's
Hmm.
how we make money, not your stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
doesn't go down well with movie makers.
yeah. So again, I mean, it's just I'm really thankful every time I think about this movie, about the fact that it actually got made, and it
And
also
it still
makes me
stands up.
just. Yeah, well,
It's
and
you can still it's still very watchable.
yeah, no,
And not
and it
just because
also.
of the nudity.
Yeah, no, and it also makes me disappointed because, again, this was uh, a, a a fork in the road in Hollywood, if you will, and its failure, or lack of success theatrically, uh, really changed sort of the direction filmmaking could have gone in. We could have gotten more of these NC-17, truly adult films, quote unquote,
Perhaps it was
with.
sabotaged for that very reason. Because this movie made
uh,
a ton of money. It's just people
yeah,
didn't want to go to a theater to see it. They want to own the videotape. They want to own that Blu-ray, right?
yeah,
Because
which is another weird commentary.
yeah, this film is an immense success, and it's being billed as a dramatic failure in every conceivable way, in the critical sense, and in box office ways, and it's just not true.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I thought, well, you might be a good person to discuss this movie with me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I
So
appreciate
thank
it,
you for
and I
that.
think this was a really, man, this was a really interesting discussion, and it's, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, but man, I it
Verhoeven makes movies that are food for thought, and
yeah,
and this every time I see it, I have a different take on it, and I think, well, it could be this, it could be that, and that's what good art does.
yeah,
It's what David Lynch was so good at. It's what
hmm,
Stanley Kubrick was so good at. It's lost now, but there are still movies you can enjoy that don't give you comfortable endings, that don't give you logical conclusions. Not everything is easy, and Showgirls certainly not easy.
no,
It's only easy on the eyes.
yeah, yeah, perfect, perfect summation.
Thank you. Anyway, um, let's talk again, and I'll see
Yeah,
you soon.
all right, thank you, Siko.
Thank you. Bye bye.